Again, let me introduce myself. My name is Ben West. I work for the National Park Service out of Atlanta in our regional office. The regional office, it's a Southeast regional office, covers 9 different states as well as Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, tough duty. And there are 70 different national park units in the Southeast region. And so out of the regional office, we help all of our parks with various and sundry activities. And obviously our 3 newest parks that were established by President Obama through the Antiquities Act as new national monuments, the 2 here in Alabama, the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument, the Freedom Riders National Monument over in Anniston, and the Reconstruction Era National Monument in Beaufort, South Carolina. Those 3 were all established on January 12th. And so obviously it was a wonderful overview of the resources, of the stories, and I'm not going to spend time because tomorrow I'm going to spend a little bit more time sort of going down memory lane and being more articulate and thoughtful about sort of how we got to where we are. I really just wanted to mention a couple of things with why we're here, introduce the team again very quickly, and then we're going to spend a few minutes kind of talking about parks and interpretive planning and to some degree some of our ideas about development planning here. Obviously, the unique nature of this is these are new parks to us. And most times we've got all these other parks that have been going for years and years, and so now we have a new opportunity to, a relatively blank canvas to work with our partner here in the city and do something dramatic. What we're doing this week, all week, is an extension of the work that was started to get the park established in the first place. And so we've invited the planning group. So I'm in the planning division, right? And so Sarah Bodo and Chuck Lawson both do sort of strategic planning for the National Park Service. Cynthia Walton is the chief historian in our regional office and was intimately involved. Hopefully some of you have read the proclamation, the language that established the thing that President Obama signed. Cynthia largely wrote most of the text in that proclamation, so she's a wonderful historian, and I'm thankful she's part of the team. And then, of course, the man in charge right now is Mr. Reggie Tiller. Reggie is the acting superintendent. We're thankful in the midst of such tough budget times to be able to have a superintendent, and Reggie is acting in that capacity. He may end up doing it long term, but until things get settled out, he has this acting title, but he's in charge of now day-to-day operations. You can see there's not a lot of operations out there, so he's in the park building mode right now, and we're thankful to have Reggie in the mix. So this week, so we went through had a big public meeting, get a sense of the civic engagement. You already heard Brent talk about the legacy of involvement and civic advocacy, and at the end of the day, that's really why this place is successful. I'm not going to talk politics. A lot of conversation. Some of you have heard about revisiting national monuments that the current administration is looking at. Some of the monuments that were established either by Obama or going back as far as Clinton, and sort of looking at the extent to which those were, how they were established. Did they follow good measures of civic engagement to support a good a good decision on behalf of the president? And the thing that, of course, resonates in this community, in Anniston and Beaufort, it's just overwhelming support and the turnout and again, the nature of the grassroots efforts. It's implausible to even suggest there's not a firm grasp on the need and on the basis for the establishment of this. So, but we are going through now then a process of, once it's established, getting into building that support for the National Park Service coming in, and what would you like to see us do in the future, and how can we work with the redevelopment work that's already been done by Jack and Irv and the work that they're doing, and sort of partnering. The basis for this park very much is a partnership park between not only the city and the Park Service, but the Civil Rights Institute, the stories they're already telling. We're gonna, Reggie's gonna talk about, I think, synergies between storytelling at Bethel and at the St. Paul's and at 16th Street as well, so leveraging those existing partnerships to just expand what's already a very compelling story and resources. So tonight there's a public meeting across the street at 16th Street Baptist Church. You don't have to come. I know you're very busy. You had last night, you got homework, you got groups, all kinds of stuff. I'm basically co-opting your meeting tomorrow because tomorrow from 9 until noon, there'll be essentially the same thing that we're going to do tonight, only with you, and not only just you, but a lot of other people we've invited as local stakeholders, the State Historic Preservation Office, some of the groups, Rev Birmingham, all those entities that maybe not be around the table, but we invited them to come in. So we're going to do the same thing tomorrow morning. So I guess what I'm saying is, you don't feel like you need to come out tonight. We're going to do a presentation that you're going to get tomorrow or see tomorrow, break out into small groups and to allow people to share some thoughts about where their ideas are for visions and stories and challenges and opportunities, those kinds of things. And they're all framed in the context of sort of what we start as our management planning process. And of course it starts like any good, I forget who was saying it, you got to get public buy-in. You have to get the community support to be able to do anything. So that's why we're here this week. That's in particular why we're here today. And again, I wanted to give you a hall pass for tonight since we're going to be doing the thing tomorrow. You're welcome to come over if you're just a glutton for punishment and love civic engagement like I do. But anyway, with that, I think, unless there's any sort of big questions about, again, I'm going to go into much greater detail tomorrow about, how the monument was established and what's included and, things that you might be interested in, or again, if you're from out of town, maybe not so much. But at least in the context of why you're here, the agenda for the afternoon did talk a little bit about civic engagement, which obviously I've talked a little bit about, and then just the role of interpretation and in augmenting and helping advance the preservation objectives that any good project has, right? It's all about, heck, Irv's a great storyteller, right? So you gotta tell a good story, and clearly there already is one, and there's a number of people that are already telling it. So I'm gonna turn it over to Sarah and let her talk a minute or two about just how we approach the idea of interpretive theme development and interpretive planning, and then Reggie's gonna close us out.
All right, thanks, Ben. So based on the tour today, I have the sense that many of you in this room have a very strong grasp of interpretive planning. Is that true? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to be learning a lot from you. But the way I want to look at this is just what we do for this initial management plan, which we call a foundation document. And one of the elements that we will be developing this fall are primary interpretive themes for the National Monument. So I have just a few short slides on this. Let's go on. Okay, so the primary interpretive themes that we will develop for the National Monument that will go in this foundation document, they are going to be at the broadest level. So we'll have about 3 to 6 primary interpretive themes. Can you imagine the stories of this National Monument fitting into 3 to 6 succinct statements? That's a little bit challenging, but it's doable. And then what happens is, from your knowledge, being interpreters or working with interpretive programming, is then the interpretive planning tiers off of this foundation document, and sub-themes are developed, and then interpreters take those sub-themes and say, okay, how am I going to make this into my program? Okay, so we're just looking at that very high, broad level. So here we have, and this is pretty much the presentation that I'll be doing in the fall with folks as we work on this foundation document. So interpretive themes relay the most important ideas or concepts to be communicated to the public about a park or a national monument. We tend to use the term park for all the units of the National Park Service because we treat them the same as far as law and policy go. And so they provide the basis for interpretive programs. Interpretive themes are based on park purpose and park significance. So the purpose is something that we also establish or write as part of this foundation document. And that is based on the presidential proclamation. It's also based on scholarship, subject matter expertise, etc. And then significance statements. So significance, why is this place nationally significant or internationally significant? We'll usually have a set of maybe 3 to 5 or 6 significance statements that really describe what resources are at the site and why they are so important to our national story and our shared heritage. So themes are based off of both of those. So themes should connect the park resources, so those things, and visitor experiences to relevant ideas, meanings, concepts, contexts, beliefs, and values. Did anyone here, as we were going on the tour through the Institute, have a moment where you had a real strong emotional reaction to anything that we saw today? I have to say I really choked up at one point, and I felt feelings of anger and rage. So those are some of those meanings that we take home and we connect with the resources that are here in Birmingham. And themes need to help people make those connections, help visitors make those connections. And then interpretive themes provide guidance for increasing visitor understanding and appreciation of the significance of the park's resources. So we really want visitors to go home and say, I understand why this place is important, why the A.G. Gaston Motel is important, why Kelly Ingram Park is important. Okay, so here's some best practices, and they're a little bit of a repeat. So these are when we write the theme statements, we'll actually be checking against these best practices. But a few that I want to add to what I've already said include, so the themes should reflect current scholarship and science. So we do want them to be accurate. We don't want a statement of hyperbole, the best national park in the West or the East, right? We don't want that. So we want it to be factual. And then we write them as complete sentences just to foster understanding. In the past, maybe like 20 years ago, the National Park Service themes were more like a list of topics that didn't really provide that direction or that personal connection that we're really trying to foster. Okay, this is just a graphic that shows that interpretive themes should cover the purpose and significance of the park, as well as the fundamental resources and values. And so the fundamental resources and values is a tongue twister, but that's a word that we use to describe what is at the site that contributes to its significance. So what would you want to preserve and protect? Otherwise, the national significance of the site could be jeopardized. So interpretive themes should, and we even create like a matrix where we have our purpose, our significance, and our fundamental resources and values, and we say, okay, which of the themes cover this fundamental resource? And we try to make sure that we've covered the gamut of what's really and truly the important things about this place. All right, and this is kind of the key thing that sums it all up. So interpretive themes include a statement of relationship between a tangible resource or experience and an intangible meaning or universal concept. So who here could describe a tangible resource? What does that mean to you? Exactly. So the tangible resources are anything you can see, feel, smell, touch. Those are the things that are here. And the motel is a perfect example. What about the intangible meanings or universal concepts? What does that mean? Yeah, exactly. And we heard Barry say real strongly, this is about human rights. Civil rights is one way to say it, but human rights is another way to say it. So those meanings that people can take home to their own lives and say, I understand that because I know about this, or this happened to me, or this happened to my family member. And then universal concepts. Anyone want to share what that is? Yeah, exactly. That's an example. Love. So some of the meanings can be most powerful when they're understood by the widest range of people, the widest range of perspectives. I mean, this site has probably an international audience, not all from a common culture, and not even from a common culture within the state, probably. So universal concepts are the meanings, but they're really ones that many, many people, the most people, can relate to in some way or another. All right, so here's an example from Zion National Park. So for the tangible resources, okay, so first we're looking at this topic, condors in Zion. So tangible resources could be endangered bird, cliff nest, lead ammunition, critical habitat. So then you think, well, okay, what are some of the meanings that are associated with those tangible resources? So for endangered bird, maybe a meaning is the memory of greater numbers of those birds, or awe. And the same thing for cliff nest, home, survival, ammunition, death, critical habitat, recovery, or freedom. So those are some of those meanings and universal concepts that might apply to that resource. And then what you try to do is create that statement of relationship. So you try to take some of the words from the tangibles and some of the words from those intangibles and draft a sentence. And this is just one example of how an interpretive theme could end up. There's no right answer. But this one says, providing critical habitat for the California condor, Zion National Park is a refuge for recovery and survival of this endangered species. And from there, you could take that. An interpreter could then draft sub-themes, create programs around that topic. Okay, so then I just have a few additional thoughts on themes that I found inspiring from our NPS Themes guide, or theme guide. So attaching meanings to places and things is a fundamental human trait. We all do this. This national monument, by definition, is one of the best touchstones for exploring our personal and national identity and character. So this is a statement that's true for any national park and probably many other sites. But here, know that's true for this place. You know it already. Okay, another quote. We ascribe special significance to people, places, events, and things that rejuvenate our spirits, challenge and strengthen our beliefs, and provoke contemplation and discussion of our past, present, and future. There's no doubt that this place can provoke a lot of discussion, perhaps challenge beliefs, and all of this, really. Okay, so then such resources provide opportunities to explore our shared heritage and help us define our character as individuals, communities, and societies. And I think I just had one more. So this place enriches humanity. With that, I will turn it over to Reggie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm going to talk about interpretation from a management standpoint. That's when the superintendent, who's not an interpreter like myself, that's not the field that I started out in. I started out in law enforcement, but when you're a superintendent, you wear many hats. I'll tell you a quick story about George Washington Carver National Monument. That was my first cultural park, if you will, with a famous person. And so I went to all the different interpreters and interpretive programs because I wanted to hear how they told it differently. And when I came away from each one of those sessions, I said, we're missing something. We're not telling the whole story. And so we interpreters sometimes tend to find bits and pieces that they want to tell, and that's what they share with the general public. Well, our surveys tell us something a little bit different. Every year we do surveys with visitors that come from all over the world, and they tell us, I felt like I didn't get enough. We didn't talk about certain things that the visitor already knew. So I challenged my interpretive staff to go just a little bit further. And of course, me not being an interpreter, I needed help. So I went out and found experts, folks that actually wrote the books. I flew them in, I gave them a very, very small stipend to re-educate my staff on telling the story of George Washington Carver. How many people know that George Washington Carver spoke before Congress? Well, my staff wasn't telling that story. And because of these 3 experts that we had to come in, we were in the process of developing a new visitor center. All of the interpretive panels pretty much changed because we had these 3 people come to our park and to re-educate our staff. In learning about him talking before Congress, the whole emotion behind him speaking, being booed and called many names that I can't say in this venue, but at the end of his speech, he was applauded. He applauded. He was applauded by Congress. This is important. We're telling stories about him running around the farm that the slave owners that owned him had, and him liking nature, but we weren't telling the hard stories. We weren't telling the critical stories about his relationship with the faculty that recruited him to Tuskegee. That there was a lot of angst, a lot of miscommunication about who he was as a person and what he would bring to Tuskegee. In some instances, George Washington Carver was a pretty arrogant guy. And I think the public needs to know that. But we also learned that he also saved the agricultural South. And we never talked about that in terms of how the cotton was robbing the soil of its nutrients. So telling the whole story is so critical. These new parks, right out of the gates, will have that opportunity because nobody's really interpreting it that way from a National Park Service perspective. One thing about interpretation that I truly appreciate is the long-range interpretive planning process, because we get the stakeholders, we get the community, and our staff to sit down and talk about these things. We can bring in educators, authors, folks that really know the story maybe better than the park staff to set that foundation for how the story is going to be told at our national parks. Training volunteers is another way of sharing that story. And many volunteers at Martin Luther King, my park, with my day job, when I go back, if I go back, is is one of those places where our volunteers do an excellent job on the weekends of filling in because we're short of staff. We know budgets are constricting, so how do you bridge that gap? And volunteers are the best way. We have retired librarians, we have retired school teachers, we have retired lawyers, people that really enjoy telling Dr. King's story. One other quick story is that knowing your audiences. Many parks stop at a certain place, if you will. Every park that I've worked at has stopped at a certain place. It's a general, middle-of-the-road story. You know, we're not trying to engage that elementary school person at their level. We're not trying to get that middle school or high schooler, but also academics as well. At William Howard Taft, we told the anecdotal parts of the story for William Howard Taft, our 27th president. And the interesting thing to me is that he was a very interesting guy that did not want to be president. He wanted to be a Supreme Court justice, and he got that opportunity to be a Chief Justice. But we were telling the story about him getting stuck in the bathtub. We were telling the stories about him throwing out the first pitch. And that's good for the elementary school child, but in going around with my interpretive staff and just watching, sometimes I go in civilian clothes, the staff knew who I am, but the visitors don't. And I'm watching expressions and body language to find out, are we meeting the visitor where they are, meeting their expectations when they come to our parks? And so we had experts come in at William Howard Taft. We paid the little stipend, we flew them in, and we changed some things. I challenged my chief of interpretation to take it a step further. And so he did a symposium with authors and lawyers and judges from Hamilton County in Cincinnati area. And we had about 50, 60 people the first year. The next year we had to move it over to Christ Hospital across the street because we had over 150 people. The next year we had to move to University of Cincinnati because we had over 400 people. And we also had, on her own dime, I can't call her name, but a Supreme Court justice to come and speak to the judges and lawyers that attended that session. So we reached out to another segment of the community to talk about this story. So those judges took days off to come, to be a part of the telling of the William Howard Taft story. I think, and because of that, people can look at the park a little bit more critically than that president that was a one-term guy that got into it with Roosevelt and didn't get reelected because they created a third party, the Bull Moose Party. See what I'm saying? So being able to spread this message up and down the spectrum, from elementary school kids to our academics, and also to our seniors, as we change and more baby boomers are going to have more time to be able to come to our parks. Interpretation is an ongoing learning process. We have asked folks to come in and do additional research to add to our stories as time goes on, a different way to tell the story, if you will. But one of the things that I try to do as a park manager is to understand the expectations of the visitor when they come. You know, yes, there's the three major questions that a visitor asks when they come to a park, and I've mentioned this to some folks. Where's the restroom? I've been in a car or in a plane. That's serious business there. How long is the park film going to be? Is it 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 12 minutes? And then this third most important question, where can I eat after I finish my visit? Those are the three things. And when I'm walking the park, consistently, I get those questions, but I'm also asked, hey, I haven't seen a ranger in a while. I haven't seen someone to ask the question. Now, visitors come to your visitor center, they want to walk and read and that, but occasionally they want to see somebody in some type of uniform that's identified that they can ask a real quick question because maybe they didn't understand something on a panel, or they want to get a little bit more information. And maybe we can point them in that direction. Now, one more, telling stories. You know, telling stories is an age-old thing before there was television, radio, and believe it or not, I remember that because I used to go to my grandfather's house. He had no electricity. He had no running water. And me and my brother would stay there in the summertime. And he would tell us stories, or he would play his banjo. And so people listen to stories. And if they're interesting stories, they want them to continue. I have a 10-year-old at home. She wants them to continue if they're interesting. I had her here for 2 days to see this park and the one in Anniston that I'm working on, Freedom Riders. And she sat in meetings because she lives in Atlanta, and she says, Daddy, what are you doing over there in Alabama? When are you coming home? I said, well, I'm helping to establish 2 new parks, get them set up for superintendents to come in and take them to a whole different level. And she didn't really understand that because I'm not there. I'm explaining it. But when she sat in some meetings, over at Alabama Power, we had one meeting here, and after the meeting, she immediately said it was so boring. But as soon as we got in the car, and started driving to my apartment, she understood. She says, well, you're doing this, Daddy, you're doing that. And these folks are interested in helping you build parks and make things such that visitors will want to come here consistently. And she basically had the same response over in Anderson as well. Didn't want to sit in those meetings, but she wants to know about the stories. So understanding your audience, making sure that your staff doesn't get complacent in terms of telling the story if they've told it. We have some park staff that, they've been around for 25, 30 years and they get used to a routine. Have research settings where you sit and you discuss the stories, you read, you give them different books, and invite that author. Many times what I have found in the authors that I've dealt with is that they want to talk about their work. And so, I paid a guy as little as $50. I paid for his plane ticket, that $50, and he came because he spent 2 days with us just to talk about his material with this staff. Because guess what? They're going to refer that visitor to that resource once they've studied it, typically. If somebody wants more, they will say, XYZ author wrote this book, and you'll find it there. So that's pretty much all I have if you have any questions. Huh?
In Anderson, the two parks that you're setting up here, how would they relate to park Tuskegee and Trail, civil rights? Any connections between them at all?
Yeah, there's definitely gonna be. I've been down to Montgomery. I've talked to Sandy Taylor down at Tuskegee. Everybody is so excited about what can be. We're already talking about Amtrak leaving Atlanta, making these stops along the way. People in Anderson saying, hey, we need overnight packages, and we need to talk to Birmingham about how to make that happen for vacations for folks and spring breaks for folks that are looking for places to take their kids. And parents are looking for that. And I'll give you an example. My daughter's 10, as I said earlier, and this spring break in March was sort of different because we asked her what she wanted to do, which is dangerous. And so we took her to Chattanooga to see Lookout Mountain and a bunch of stuff around there, a cruise for lunch on the riverboat. And then she had another long weekend, and we asked her, she said, I want to go to the Little White House. Well, that took me back. Because I said, now I know I'm supposed to know this. So I just, Google is good for something. So I typed in Little White House, Warm Springs, Georgia. I said, well, that's a day trip at a minimum. Then she wanted to go on a safari, which wasn't too far away. But the main reason why she wanted to go is because Peachtree City has golf carts that you can rent and drive all over the city down there. And so we actually spent 3 days down there. But, there was some history in it. The Little White House, it's not a national park site, but it's something that they're interested in. So, yeah, these sites here, I'm getting calls from all over the United States, Minnesota, Nebraska, California. I met with a couple from Massachusetts. We talked for an hour and a half about the park. And they come, there's nothing happening right now, but they said, hey, we're getting ready to schedule our trip. Can we stay in touch with you so we can come back? And so people are excited to come here. And, I've been able to talk to community folks as well as people from out of state. And, there are some folks that are sitting on the fence about us telling these stories because they feel like, well, it's negative. No, it's American history. It is American history. And if you don't tell American history holistically, what will we do? We may go back to, exactly. I don't want to go back to. So we got to know our history. Our kids have to know our history. Our history makes us better. And so I love having those conversations with those folks that are sitting on the fence trying to decide or determine whether these are positive stories. They are, because it's American history. Some of the events, they weren't positive, but it's American history, and it has to be told. And that's what excites me so much about being here in Alabama, because many of these things occurred just 2 or 3 years before I was born. A bunch of stuff in the civil rights and human rights era happened, when I was, just born or in that time frame. And to be here is critical. It's critical. And so, thank you. If there's no other questions. Just one right here. Sorry. Yeah, well, fortunately for me, I've been in Cincinnati, medium-sized city, in Atlanta now, and then here in Birmingham. And I don't think that the challenges are any more difficult than at a Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon, any of those places. They just look different, The things that we deal with in Atlanta is homeless population. They're everywhere. They're sleeping in the park. We're moving them along. We have a strategy around that. Making sure that street signs can direct people. GPS is good, but a lot of times they take you somewhere else. And so every major city, signage on your interstates, it's strategic areas, getting off those interstates to get people directly to your site, and making sure that all of the different partners and the stories that are told are complementary. There's going to be some overlap, which is good because it leads the person to the next site, like 16th Street or St. Paul or to Bethel or to another location. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Okay, we're ready to get started. Brent gave me one important order. Try not to put you guys to sleep, So I'm going to try hard not to put you to sleep. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple high-level things that really get down to some low-level things, right? And we're talking about place-based redevelopment, which is when we're talking about the Gaston and the office building, et cetera. That's really very specific place-based redevelopment. But one of the things I believe is that is nestled within a different context. It's community development planning, because you have to really think about how these things work together. For a lot of the work around historic preservation work, frequently I think the context is this sort of circle of disinvestment. It's been either disinvestment in that particular asset, or in many cases, if you look at this community, disinvestment in this community. When you think about, if you listen to what people told you about how people dressed up to go take pictures, on what was it, 17th Street, It's a very different community. People aren't dressing up to go do that now. So it's a long history of disinvestment. So understanding that context, that if you want to make your place successful, you need to make your community successful. And they're related to each other. It's a really specific relationship. And what is successful community? I think of successful community in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Frankly, what we do with buildings is at the very bottom. It kind of gives us shelter, right? But it's everything else that gets to this place of self-actualization, where we can realize our human potential. There was a time when this community helped people realize their full human potential. A.G. Gaston became worth over $100 million in this community. He realized his full human potential. There were many other people did. This community does not do that anymore. If we're going to make place-based redevelopment, what we really want to do in the process of that is make this community healthy again. We have to talk about the environment, we have to talk about the economy, we have to talk about the social systems that we're working to reconstruct, we have to talk about how culture works, and we have to talk about opportunity structures. And when I say opportunity structures, things that enable people to do better, things that enable people to reach their objectives. So when you start thinking about the uses of this building, one of the things Irvin talked about is he likes to do projects that are catalytic. He talked about the Granada Theater as a catalytic project. Catalytic projects are projects that help communities become self-actualized. So when we want to talk about creating place, what we really want to do is talk about creating self-actualized communities and self-actualized people. So they are connected. It's a project in Harlan. Bad process, right? This is right in Mount Morris Park, or Marcus Garvey Park, a historic district. This building looked like this for nearly 25 years because the state came in with a top-down process to put in a prison. They were going to turn these nice, formerly row houses into a prison. And the community rose up and said, no, 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 no. The state tried doing it anyhow. We went to court, got stopped, the money disappeared, and it sat empty for 20 years. This is what investment looks like. That's what the building looks like now. 40 families live there and own their own moderate income condos, right? It happened because of a different process, a very different process with very different objectives. It wasn't just creating place, it was about community transformation. This is where we worked in Rwanda, right? That looks like disinvestment. This is a half kilometer away. That looks like investment. That looks like, this is actually that same site. That looks like disinvestment. That looks like investment. That looks like people who you've been invested in. And that looks like a new community. And that looks like people working. So it's a process. And whether it's in Rwanda, whether it's rebuilding a community after genocide, or whether it's rebuilding a community after disinvestment, there's a process that you need to get familiar with because it's the same process wherever you are. This is a project we worked on in Harlem. That was the way it looked when we started. That was the way it looked when it finished. It's a very different process, you know, from building a new building, you know, in the intersection of Main and Main. And that's in real estate. They say, well, you want to be at the intersection of Main and Main. These projects tend to be at the intersection of nowhere and nowhere. They are places that have been ignored. They are places that have been disinvested, and they're places that need people to care again because there's still people there that want to be self-actualized. The sort of projects you can do can change the dynamics of those communities. The time frame? When we started working on this project, it was just after the recession, like 2009, and that's a project as it stands now. Historic tax credits, new market tax credits. Look, I had hair when I started that project, right? Right. And so if you want to do that and you have hair, buy a wig. And so, but, you know, the outcome is important, right? Because it changes how that corner feels, right? It changes how that piece of Harlem feels, and it's changing that little area right around it. Yeah, that's right there at Park Avenue, and it created jobs for people, you know. It created jobs for people and permanent jobs for people. And the process that makes the difference between that first picture that took 20 years to get someplace, it's all about a participatory process, right? One of the things that really you need to think about is what does participatory process means. It's not just doing the minimum that some entitlement agency says you need to do, right? It's really hearing those kind of stories that we just heard. It's really sitting down with people and listening to what their vision is for their community. So it's the same place everywhere. Whether you're in Paducah, Kentucky, or, or whether you're in Rwanda, or whether you're in Louisville, or whether you're in Jackson, Mississippi, it's the same process, you know, which for developers can be a challenge, right? It's probably typically not our biggest skill, listening to people, because for developers, the sort of prototype that you think is, I'm smart, I got an idea, I got someone that's going to give me some money, you guys get out of my way, I'm going to make it happen, right? It's all the wrong process. It's all the wrong process. And I think that's the prototype image that you have of developers. So, but what you really do, if you're really trying to do this community development process, the stakeholders will tell you what they want while you listen and reconcile what they want with what you want. That's the most important thing, right? Listening, having some ideas about what you want to do, but reconciling those with what the stakeholders want. One of the things that you want to do is, I call this whole process restorative human settlement, right? And so, as opposed to just building or restoring a building or whatever, historic restorations, whatever it is really not about that. It's about making communities healthy again. So the things you want to do when you're talking to people, you want to listen to what the deficits are. And that comes in a lot of ways, you know. On the one hand, you can listen, you can hire professional consultants to tell you what the leakage is and what could work here economically, and that's all good, because we do that too, right? But, and that usually costs a lot more. I got to get this $11,000 that Irvin is getting that for, but that usually costs us a lot more than that, right? But we do it, right? But the truth of the matter is, you can sit down and listen to the people in community, and you will hear all the things the consultant's going to tell you. They will tell you, I can't buy fresh vegetables here. They will tell you, it's not a dry cleaners that does good work. We do exercises where we get a group like this, right? And we put up maps of the community and give them green pens, red pens, and blue pens, right? And the red pens are things that really suck in their neighborhood. The green things are things that someone talked about doing but never got done. And the blue pens are things that are really amazing, right? And you'll see that you'll have all these red pens, right? And you'll have all these green pens, you know, and the green pens and the red pens are all the things that ultimately will make you money in that community, make a project successful. There are other ways of doing it also, but that's a real simple way. So this sort of engagement, you know, is sort of circular, because what you want to do is get to the solutions, right? And it's all about communications, right? And you want you want it to happen in a whole lot of different ways. This unsuccessful project in Harlem that took so long was just, it was just one of these. It was top down, you know? I rode in on my white horse with my white hat, and I told you what was good for you, and we're doing that. It's a bad process. The best process is when you have peer-to-peer communications, where you have groups of people from the same community talking to each other, and you're there talking with them. When you have top-up, bottom-down, and you have people both inside the community and outside the community, right? People that are stakeholders and people who are not stakeholders. Frequently in these disinvested communities, one of the things you want to ultimately do is bring new stakeholders, right? Because if you look at the population density of this community versus this community in 1950, and I don't have to look at the census, right? I know there are a lot fewer people living in this census tract right now than there were in 1950. So there are people who are now outsiders who their parents might have been insiders, right? They might very well come to church here on Sundays and leave, right? And go back to wherever they now live, because they've become outsiders because the community is under-resourced. It doesn't have the resources to support a successful life in the 21st century. So that's what you want to hear from. You want to hear from the insiders, the outsiders. You want top-down. You want bottom up, you want peer to peer, you want every kind of communication you can get. And it's going to get you to right there. It's going to get you to the real solution to what you need to be doing. And so these are my top 10 reasons for engagement. And number 10 is I want to restore an edifice that is a critical piece of the community story, which may be different from my story that is commonly told. My 9th reason is I can't imagine planning to change something in a community without engaging that community. Number 8, I want the project to contribute to the positive transformation of the community. Number 7, I want to improve the well-being of the people in the community. Number 6, I want to get as much consensus and buy-in as humanly possible to help mitigate economic risk. Number 5, I want the project to be economically successful. Number 4, I come to believe that the short-term pain of engagement, which it can be painful, is more bearable than the long-term pain of a failing project. Number 3, I want an effective approval and entitlement process. It is nothing better to go to a public meeting and have everyone applaud you because what you're proposing to do is something they wanted you to do. It's just an amazing feeling. And any commissioner, any city council person, anyone that was thinking about not supporting it, number 2, I finally learned that I'm not the smartest person in the history of the universe, and I don't know everything. That's the one the developers take. It's a long time to realize that, but ultimately you do, right? And number 1, I finally realized that the community stakeholders are the first tier of the market that will contribute to the project's economic success or failure. That's who's going to make it work. That's who's going to make it fail, right? So those are my top 10 reasons for engagement, right? And so when you start talking about engagement and the impacts of these projects and the objectives, right? Every project has impacts that I will call global, I'll call them micro, and I'll call them macro. And so when I say, and you can look at that in any number of ways, right? But if this is the sweet spot in the project, right? Then what that says is when I say micro, people are going to live in, rent space, provide services, do something in that building once you get it back online. And if they do that well, and you've done it well, in the macro sense, it will affect other people in that community outside of that building. So you're going to look at this sort of micro impact, and that's the first thing banks and financial institutions are going to ask you to do. Is someone, as Irvin said, going to pay you enough rent or buy it for the right price, so your operating costs are going to be low enough so your debt coverage ratios are good? And that's all about the micro thing, right? But the macro thing, I think, when you're looking at disinvested communities, is just as important. What difference is this building going to make in this community? Well, if you say, well, the only difference it's going to make is it's going to make me $2 richer than I was before I started, that's a pretty piss-poor ass reason to be doing it, right? And so I think you have to ask yourself those larger questions, what difference is this going to make in this community? And here's the truth of the matter is when you're doing place-based redevelopment, it really goes far beyond that community, right? Whether it's this project or other projects, someone from around the world, from outside of this community, from the other part of Alabama, from Georgia, from Texas, from France is going to show up at this place-based project if it's successful, right? Because you have that sort of impact, right? There's going to be someone that gets it that you will never know in that community. So you're really always trying to think about these sort of intersecting circles of who your customer is, who you're going to affect, and how do you manage that? And so who is impacted, who do you manage? Who do you need to manage outcomes? Assure that the impacts are positive. That's really about building the team, right? Because I talked about who's going to be impacted, but building the team, right? So I think Irv had pretty much that same slide of people that should be on the team. But the thing to note is that the project, that first project I showed you in Harlan, which was the sort of frame of a building, right? It started with the state with all the wrong team, right? Well, when the new team came in, it was all the right players, right? It was all the right process. The project got the approvals just like things that should have taken a year and a half to get approved in New York got approved in like 9 months, which is like the statutory minimum that it would take, right? Because they had the right team, they listened to the community, and getting that right team, not as you go. When we start a project, I have, on day one that I hire an architect, I've hired a contractor, I've hired a marketing team, I've hired everyone that I'm going to use on that team, because one of the things I want is everybody to be on my side of the fence, because there are going to be a whole bunch of other people on the other side of the fence. And when I say that, those people are going to be at financial institutions and all sorts of places. This place has been vacant 20 years. Why are you here doing this, right? So you want to be sure that you've assembled the right team and have all the players engaged early in the process. And so this is just when we were working on that redevelopment in Rwanda, this is just sort of a general idea that's sort of conceptual about the levels of intervention, strategic interventions, and who you're talking with, right? It's still about communications, right? And what we call this circle of things are project considerations. What are things you got to think about? And people in the community, when you talk to them, they'll tell you what those things are. Well, you know, electricity costs a lot here. You know, we pay 28 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity, so God, I probably don't want electric heat, you know. Or if we got to do air conditioning, do we really have to do that? Can we do natural ventilation? And you ask all those sort of questions, and those things become the sort of considerations. And for every project, the project considerations are going to be different. You can do a project on this corner, and the considerations will be very different from the considerations on that corner, right? Because considerations are very site-specific, right? And so you have to define what those considerations are. You can start to think about it yourself, but when you're doing that communications with all your stakeholders, both inside and outside, that's where you really start to develop those considerations, right? And so when you think about it, you get through those considerations, and then you start to talk about what the interventions will be. And anytime you're going to, paint a wall, put in a window, do anything, it's an intervention, right? And what you want to do is understand how to manage those interventions, right? Because when you do an intervention, what you want it to do is have a positive impact. My dad used to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And the reason it's paved with good intentions is because people didn't really understand the interventions they were making at the level they needed to understand them. So understand the interventions, right? And don't necessarily lean toward what's commonly done, right? Because frequently commonly done interventions are not the right interventions, particularly when you're looking at the type projects we're talking about. You really have to rethink the whole thing. And so this process is rethinking this whole thing, understanding what the considerations are, making the appropriate interventions, right? Understanding the program, and the people and you during those conversations, you'll figure out what the program, what the it is, what the there will be, what the place will be. And when you do that, you ultimately get to things that can do things like create jobs for people. And so these same people here were the people that were in this cooperative that we started talking to them. It was kind of a slow process. It was a 2-year process. Well, it was the travel and et cetera, but it was a 2-year process, right? And those same people, they They wanted to build a school, they wanted a farm, they wanted businesses, they wanted to be in the cash economy. It was a landlocked country, Rwanda is, and so we helped them set up a brick factory using, you can see the clay-looking soil. So they made the bricks there. They built everything there. It was a long process, right? But they built a community, everything from organic vegetable farm to the brick, the buildings, and everything themselves. They have a brick factory. They're building other houses in Rwanda. They're helping other people set up farms. The same thing happens in cities. The same thing happens in disinvested community. Any disinvested community can be turned into a place where you get the real multiplier effect, right? When you're realizing what you are investing in, it is not in buildings, it's in people, right? We are investing in people because what we want to be is make communities self-actualized, right? And the only way we can do that is investing in people. This project, when we invested in people, right, it created 40 new homes for people in a community that changed the discourse there. It became part of a larger plan that we were looking at, not the building, but the corridor. It was called Crosstown 116th Street, where we looked at the corridor from along 116th Street from the East River to the Hudson River, which we were talking about that this morning. And so that building is right here by that park there, right? That building, oops, how do I go back? That building is right here on that corner. So we thought of that whole thing as a corridor, and we brought people across the summer from all along that corridor. And the people were so diverse, you know. There was an African immigrant community there, right about in this area there that were newly arrived. There was an older African American community, one there, a Latino, an Italian community, and there, a new sort of Central American immigrant community. And everyone thought about this corridor as someone else coming into their community, right? And so everyone was the other, right? Now the community was disinvested. We did this study in 1997, right after Habitat 2, right? Harlan was devastated, right? It had been devastated by some of the same things that happened here. Urban renewal came and tore down everything. It was vacant land after vacant building after vacant building. It was during the height of the drug crack epidemic. There were shooting galleries. The heroin thing hadn't really ever ended in Harlem, and it was crazy. And so what we did is we did this Crosstown 116th Street, and out of that process, that building that was restored, we got the financing for that. That building there was built on this corner. We built that building there, and over the course from 1997 till the recession, over 1,200 new homes and restored buildings were put in that corridor because there was an effective engagement process. It took almost 2 years for that process, right? But the outcome is a community that is forever changed. It's a community that is now supporting beneficial human activity, right? When we say transformative projects, these projects we're talking about here can be transformative. They have the potential to be transformative. Tools, how do you do this, right? There are a lot of ways of, managing, these sort of discussions, right? There are a whole lot of really fancy stuff, that we used in the Clinton Global Initiative. We used to use this software that you got in the breakout tables and everyone sort of typed the little things they were doing, and the computer picked up the buzzwords that were being heard, right? And so everything, so then you see the graphic, and what you basically could see visually what people thought were important. Well, that's really fancy, whiz bang, but sticking the little pins in the board work also. This guy out at the University of San Francisco, he has a system called Streetwise, which is an app that you can do. You can buy it, you put it on your phone, you give it to people, and they are asked just to go around the neighborhood and make a comment about what's missing in their neighborhood, what they like, et cetera, right? And then the apps, you know, does all the analytics, and it tells you about, oh, we don't have any daycare facilities here. Oh, we have a child care facility, but it sucks, you know? And you can start to see what's missing in the neighborhood. And that sort of is these sort of systems are sort of democratizing information for planning, right? And it's a new way, because planning has never been democratized, right? You know, it's always been someone with a whole lot of fancy degrees from someplace that rides in on their pony and tells you, this is what's good for you, right? Or this is what the rest of the world is doing, right? But what we start to think about now is when you're doing planning, is how do you do grassroots, bottom-up planning, right? To get to what the real solutions are. It seems like people would have figured that out a long time ago, but I guess, you know, I don't know, they didn't. So, that's it. You can go. Keep the microphone.
Have you had to deal with engagement fatigue? I mean, one of the things that we're finding, what's happened in our neighborhood is that there's a lot of funding available, so developers and agencies and consultants have come through again and again and again, and so now people don't even want to come out. They just feel like people use our misery to make money for themselves, and we don't see any of it spent in the community and where to go.
Well, yeah, it can be that, but, and here's what the challenge is, why that happens, right? People want to see tangible results, right? You know, and so you've got to start delivering tangible results, right? Tangible results can come in a lot of ways, right? So when we were here in Birmingham with the Road Center, that was one of the things we talked about, tangible results. Now, tangible results don't have to be a new airport in the middle of this community, right? Tangible results can be many things. So if you can talk about things like, we want to make more activities happen in this community, right? Well, you don't have to build an activity center. You can have twice a week on weekends an event here. It can be a farmer's market. It can be anything, right? But what people have to see is that something that's changing, right? And so in New York State, we did projects in another disinvested neighborhood, Ocean Hill, East New York, right? And we started that in '92, right? And we went in and talked, and we didn't really have the financing to do the housing yet, and blah, 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 but we ultimately got it. But so what did we do? The first thing we did is we got with the state of New York, which will set up a farmer's market for you, right? And so we worked with churches, and on 3 of these vacant lots, we went in and cleared them, we paved them, and we did farmers markets and music festivals out of our pocket, right? And people said, oh, something is happening here, right? It was 2 years before we built the first house. By the time we built the last house, we had built 500 of them, and since that time, another 4,000 have been built there, right? But you've got to find small ways to deliver tangible results, you know? And let people know that these tangible results are part of a larger process. Yes, sir.
In the process, we work with nonprofits, so how do you
Let me say this. I'm trying to think, when was the last project I didn't work with a nonprofit? I can't think of it, right? And it gets funded different ways. So the project in Rwanda, we were working with Bloomberg Philanthropies, and they paid for everything. And Women for Women was our nonprofit partner on that, right? The projects in Harlem, one of them was the Masjid Malcolm Shabazz, and the other one was, I can't remember who the other one was. But how do we pay for that? For the one in Rwanda, I didn't pay a thing for it, right? The one with Masjid Malcolm Shabazz, right? I paid $250,000 out of my pocket to pay their cost for doing it, right? It's a development. You talked about soft costs, right? It's a line item in my development budget, right? it went toward my equity in the project, you know? It was probably as good an investment as my investment in the architect, right? Because as a consequence of that, in that corridor, we built 400 condominiums, you know? This wasn't a bad investment on my part, you know? Yes, sir.
With that script, what advice would you give to the nonprofits that are in the clients and they're like you? Maybe do all of it. Just like, how do you find developers that can do fund your development costs and then also, maybe like you said.
Well, let me tell you something. The more experienced the developers are, the more they're going to be willing to do that, right? Because they know it's part of the process. So, Barron's, what's the name of? McCormick Barron Salazar, right? They will do that. They will fund some of those costs because they know I've got to do this. You can also, we've also been able to go back and get, at least in New York, to get city council members to pick up some of that cost, right? If you say you're willing to do it, right, we've been able to get, if I've spent $250,000 on that, I'd say I got at least 175 of it back at some point through city council allocations, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of it has to be you're finding people that understand and are vested in the process, right? So you've got your typical for-profit developer that's been doing development at the intersection of Main and Main, right? They are not going to get it. Like, why do I need to do all this, you know? And so it's finding, I mean, just like if you're a nonprofit, the same way you got to find the right architect and the right engineer and the right marketing company, you got to find the right development partner, right? You got to sit down and interview them and tell them what you want and find out if they're going to do it and find out if they ever done it before, because they could be lying. I'm not saying people in real estate lie, but you know. Because I've got a president that, right? Yes, ma'am.
That's so significant for me at this time and for our project because we've been made to feel ashamed that we can't come up with the pre-development costs and that we have to ask for help. It's been told to us that that shows that our project is not worthy and our history is not worthy. So for you to say that means a lot to me at this time, and that's part of why I came here to Birmingham because I just wanted to be a part of this. But while we're on the phone, I just want to tell you something. One of my volunteers, who's an artist, she's like, there are 2 asphalt trucks out in front of the houses. Why are they there? I'm like, I don't know. So she's like, I'm going back there and I'm going to see, and I'm going to check the gates to make sure they're locked. I'm like, okay, thank you. She says, if I have to, I'm chaining myself to the because they're not getting in here while you're not here. And I said, okay, well, let me know. So she took pictures and she said, everything seems all right. And I also want to say, like, the level of commitment, my neighbors sent me here. They reached into their pockets and gave me money to come down.
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to offer a project that I worked on in Kansas City, and it was a nonprofit. But we worked with architects, engineers, and that they paid when the project closed. So all the pre-development was done, everybody that was in, we all got paid when the project closed. And so that's another way that.
Closed on the construction financing.
Right, for the construction.
Yeah.
So that there's, so a lot of work got done, so that means that you're working with people who trust you, that you delivered, because they know they're not gonna get left with really, sometimes a year's worth of work or longer, before they actually got paid, so. But so we did that, and also, I worked with the McCormick Barron Salazar too. Excellent, working with
Yes, sir.
So I'm wondering, how does this all work when you have a project like mine, 2
I mean, I wish I knew the answer specifically, but I'll tell you the answer generally, right? The answer is you've got to have a sticky idea, right? You know, what was the name of that book where you talked about sticky ideas? I can't think of it, right? I can't think of the name of the book. Orange book. It's, but anyhow, when I say a sticky idea, not good to great. What's the guy, young African-American guy that has kind of wild hair? He's written, who? Malcolm Blackwell, right. Yeah. Yeah, it was Tipping Point, right, Tipping Point, that was it. And one of the things he talked about in Tipping Point was, you know, if you want to get something to go like that, you need a really sticky idea. And what is the sticky idea? He kind of gave 4 or 5 things to define the sticky idea. Number 1, it's simple, right? Don't have to think about it a lot. It's not a 10-page dissertation. It's a simple, sticky idea, right? The other thing he talked about, it has to be something that resonates with people, right? And I don't remember what the other 4 were, but if you can get the book, you can find them, right? For the Rwanda project, and this was only one piece of it, right? We were trying to get money from Bloomberg Philanthropies, right? And the person that sort of runs the Africa and women's thing for Bloomberg, she said, well, you know, Carlton, I like what you're talking about doing here, but, you know, if you want Mr. Bloomberg to put any money into this, you've got to narrow it down to a half page, you know, and you got to tell him who, what, why, and where, and when, you know, in a half page. I'm like, but I'm asking for $50 million. Verna says, listen to me. Read my lips. You've got to narrow it down to a half page, because you can't get his attention in a half page. You will never get his attention, right? And so it's the sticky idea. You know, when you're talking to a banker, it's a sticky idea. When you're talking to a foundation, it's a sticky idea. When you're talking to a community, it's a sticky idea. I don't know enough about your project to know what the sticky idea, but for every project I've ever worked on, there's a sticky idea, right? And getting that is the key to success.
Can I just